Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar on how to load test for a successful and lucrative Black Friday or peak traffic event. Before I pass it over to our host for today, Tim, Solutions Architect with our partners at A&I and specializing in Blazemeter, and Sesha as well, who is on the line, who is working with our customers with Blazemeter as well. I just want to have a few housekeeping announcements. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll send out the video in the coming days, also with any links to blogs or resources that are covered in the webinar as well. So we'll be sending that out, and look for that in your inbox. Feel free to ask as many questions as you want. We may not be able to get to all of them on this webinar, but we'll try and answer them all in the coming days as well. You should see a questions tab in your webinar panel. All you have to do is just type in your question, and we'll get to as many as we can. And please try and keep them as on topic as possible. And anything that we can't answer, like I said, we'll try and reach out in the coming days. Lastly, there's a short survey that's going to pop up at the end of the webinar. If you can take those 10 seconds to just answer it, and you can also request a follow-up session for more information, or request for additional topics you'd like us to cover in our webinars. We have a lot of different resources, and we really want to kind of make the content as relevant and valuable for you as possible in our upcoming events. So I'm gonna now pass the presenting over to Tim, our solutions architect, and thank you all again for joining us. And take it away, Tim.
Yes, thank you. So hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining. My name is Tim Higgins. I'm a solutions architect, and I've been working with testing and APM monitoring for a little over 10 years. But I've been in the software business for about 20 years. So today we're going to cover best practices and how to prepare for and execute peak readiness tests. The goal is to help you all succeed on peak traffic days. This time of year, we've got a lot going on with elections and holidays, which brings us Black Friday and Cyber Monday. With that in mind, today I'll be giving you all a mix of high-level principles, guidelines, and things that help you have a stronger plan to begin with, and some technical details, tips along the way. So with saying all that, let's get started. So when do I start testing? When do I start preparing for Black Friday, open enrollment, or some other event? The answer is, it's really never too early to start preparing for peak traffic. You should always plan ahead. The earlier, the better. Some companies start planning for Black Friday as early as February or March. These companies make sure they run all their large-scale tests in advance so that they have enough time to uncover all their issues. Now, in the real world, we really don't have that much resources to do that. We may not have that much time. We're always rushed to get to the next sprint. So at the very least, we would make sure that you leave enough time for your fixes. When you do your planning for testing, do not test 2 weeks before you go live. Do not test 2 weeks before the big event. Do not be that person that says, we're good as long as we're in QA by Friday, because realistically, you're not. Think about why we do testing. You're testing because you want to find areas to be fixed, and you want to find enough time to make improvements before that big day. So how often should I test? Well, the truth is, smaller tests and continuous tests are going to save a lot of time and money. When you test earlier within your software development lifecycle, hence shift left, you would have enough opportunity to uncover all the issues very early in this game. This makes you better prepared for that peak event. And honestly, if you haven't started a test already, start right after this call. Just jump right into it. But my scope here is to leave you all very committed to doing the right thing for your company and to prevent you from costly lessons learned. So with saying that, let's look at why we should be doing this to begin with. Really, the big reason is that the cost of failure to test and then having surprises happen when real demand arrives is pretty high. So if you look at this list, the first one here is direct loss of money. Obviously, if you have a big day where it's a product launch or an open enrollment or some sort of promotion that you're spending a lot of money on, if you aren't able to meet the demand and you crash or run slow, you're going to lose a significant amount of business. And business equals money. If you look at this little link thing here, notice Amazon, when it goes down, it loses about 66,000 per minute. And I got that from Forbes. The second one is your reputation. We all sadly know the fact about reviews. Most people do not spend time to write good reviews. When you read reviews, you're usually reading when someone isn't happy. With all the social media today, you don't want to leave a lot of people unsatisfied. Because not only are they going to be upset, but they're going to spread the word, and your reputation will take a pretty big hit. Now, related to that is the immediate churn. If your prospects won't be able to enroll to the healthcare plans or find that widget they're looking to buy, they're probably going to go to the next one on the list, which is going to be your competitors. Anytime we build up a customer base, we want to retain them. If they churn, it hurts your revenue, not just that day, but moving forward. Probably in early 90s when .NET was coming big, I remember reading an article. It was either between Microsoft and Barnes & Nobles or Microsoft and Amazon that basically stated that if your customer spends more than 5 seconds looking for that book, they've already moved on to the next site. Now, saying that, imagine what that time is today. Now, the last one here is usually the flip side of that, the snowball effect, which that is if you manage to stay online on a day when others are having issues, you're going to gain additional traffic. And it's going to grow on top of what you anticipated you were going to have. Now, the good and bad and the ugly, not only are you getting your customer base that you had planned for and tested for, now you're getting somebody else's, which is double, tripling, or even more to your payload. The question is, can your systems handle that? So to sum all this up, all these items listed here are related to the loss of money. Let's be honest, none of us want that. So why Blazemeter? And what is Blazemeter? Well, Blazemeter was built for developers as well as testers and enables them to test web, mobile, microservices, and API through the software development lifecycle. As you can see on the slide deck, it's pure SaaS. You only need a browser and you can calibrate over the web. It's 100% open source compatible with all the leading testing tools, JMeter, Selenium. You can drive massive load from more than 55 geolocations and from behind a corporate firewall. Blazemeter is massively scalable, and you can test more than 10 million virtual users concurrently. It facilitates continuous testing that leads to a superior test coverage at speed. The product's reporting is highly comprehensive and provides great insight into what's happening with your app. Its APM integration compatibility lets you see server-side KPIs, hence see from the beginning to the end. The entire platform is API-based, where you can kick off test using API calls, you can stop test API calls, you can pull logs from API calls, you get it, right? You can do everything from the API. So the question is, that we're talking about today, is how do I build up to doing a really big test? How do I do the large-scale test? What is the methodology I should be following? So in the same, this is kind of a scope. Here are the steps we're going to cover. We're going to create the script. We're going to test the script. Then we're going to calibrate the script, run a performance test against the script, and then we're going to stress test the script. So first, let's talk about the script. Okay, and the first thing you definitely need is a script. Well, some of you already have scripts. You may have JMeter scripts, you may have Selenium scripts, or some other brand. You can upload those scripts into Blazemeter and start testing right away. But the big question is, what if I don't have one? And what is the best way to get started? Well, luckily, Blazemeter has a great Chrome extension that will help you get started right away. It basically records all the traffic on your website and spits out a JMeter or a Selenium script. You can then test that script in JMeter, make changes, modify, whatever you want to, and then upload it into Blazemeter right away. The other one here is the Blazemeter's proxy recorder technology. You can easily record, create JMeter test scenarios for your mobile or web app, even when using a secured connection. The proxy recorder works with both web, mobile browsers, and native mobile apps. And the best part is, you don't need to install any software on your phone or computer. So let me kind of show you how to do the Chrome extension. So I'm going to bounce over here. I have this fake site that I kind of put together. It's just basic HTML. There's no database or anything like that. But I'm going to go up here to my Chrome extension. And don't worry, I'll show you how to get this Chrome extension right after this. I'm going to click on this. We give it a name. And all we do is hit record. And now it's recording. Now I'm going to ask you to watch this URL because that's very important since this is just HTML. I can scroll down here. I can click on some cool bikes. I like this one, so I'm going to add it to my cart. Now my URL changed. And I'm going to go down here. I've got more than one kid, so I'm going to add equality. And now my URL changed again. That's great. So I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to change my rating. And then I'm going to shoot Tony Hawk a message. Now we're going to stop this recording. And if you notice, it's kind of flickering up here. So I'm going to click on it. And we hit Save As. Here I have the options. I can do a JMeter and a Selenium combined, which is a YAML file. I can do just the YAML file by itself. Or in this case, for this demo, we're going to do the JMeter. So we hit Save. And while that's saving, I'm going to hop over here. If I already have it running, I do. Let me drag it over. I have my JMeter application running, and I'm going to open it up. We're going to go to my Downloads folder. And I'm going to pick the JMeter file that we just created. Now the best thing is, this JMeter file was created by the Blazemeter extension, right? So I can click through here, I can change the settings, I can open this up. Remember when I told you to watch the URLs? Here they are, right? So I can go in here and modify this if I want to, whatever I need to. I can change these, export this, save it off, and I export, just save. And then we can go into Blazemeter, which luckily I have it running as well. Right here. Now, if you've never seen Blazemeter, click in, log in. This page has a lot of information we're probably going to spend an hour on by itself. But what we want to do is click Create Test. Excuse me. When I click Create Test, I now get this cool little window. Now down here, I have my recorder, right, that we talked about, the proxy recorder, and then I have my Chrome extension. If I click this, it's going to take me to download and install the Chrome extension. But here, we're going to create a performance test. This pretty big blue button here, I'm going to click it. It's going to take me to my downloads, and I'm going to upload my file. Once my file is uploaded, notice it's validating here. Now, I didn't test it. It's validated that it's an actual good file. And here we can download and delete and re-upload if we need to. So with saying that, let's jump back over here. Because now we got our Chrome extension, we've got a script, we uploaded our script. The next thing we're going to do is test that script, okay? So the best part is Blazemeter does this for you. Blazemeter gives you a free way to validate your scripts with what we call a sandbox debug testing. That's really just to prove that your test itself does what it's supposed to. Not at scale, not necessarily looking for response times or finding any breakpoints, but Blazemeter provides this feature called debug testing, which costs absolutely nothing. It is designed so that it can take your test, run it quickly, and get feedback. Now, realistically, like you saw me with a JMeter, if I have one script, I'm probably going to go in there, modify it with JMeter, export it, and upload it. But what if you have a complex test that has lots of moving parts, has different data files, and you just want to make sure that it runs? Well, that's what Blazemeter will do for you. Let's go look at it. Back to the file that we uploaded, there's this cool button called Debug Test. Now, if I click this, it's going to run for 10 users, 1 engine, and a maximum duration of 5 minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off. So right now it's testing our script. Remember, one engine, 10 users, and it's going to run for 5 minutes. So we'll come back to this. So keep this in the back of your mind, and we'll jump back to it in a second. Right now, let's go into the next topic while that's running, is a calibration test. Now, this one's kind of fun to explain because it makes sense, but you have to follow closely. In calibration testing, our goal is just to make sure that while we're using the particular scripts we've created, which may be lightweight or heavy, and by heavy, I mean CPU or memory usage, we want to figure out how many virtual users you can get out of a single load engine with the scripts we've created. That's all calibration testing is. We run calibration tests to learn how do I make sure that when I scale this up, that the testing platform that is running the test is not actually becoming the bottleneck. Okay, let's kind of look at that. That one, like I said, is kind of fun. to look at. Let's kind of give this a second to see if this wraps up. Close. All right, so we'll come back to this one. But what we can do is we can go down and scroll. Oh, it finished. There we go. So this was our debug test before we look at calibration. And I wanted to stick with the same one just so it was, what I would say, apples for apples kind of saying, right? Just so we're sticking with the same file. But you can do this with any of them. So what we're looking at is a really good screen if you've never seen it. Most importantly, I have 0 errors. Now I can get that from here, but we're going to talk about this menu later. Right now I can see that I have 0 errors, but if I did have errors, then I could go back to my settings here, download the file again, bring it into JMeter, modify those errors, and upload them. So if I go back to my test, and if I click on this one, this is one we downloaded. Notice that there's no execution test, because this is going to be a double negative, so follow me. There's no non-debug test, right? But there is a debug test. That's what we just ran. So we're going to go to our non-debugging, and we're going to click calibration, because what we're talking about now is determining our users per engine. Now, if I say I want 500 users, my duration we're going to run for 45. Now my ramp up time, we're going to get more into this in a few seconds, but basically it's how long it takes to get to my max number of users. And, you know, I like to have it a little bit less. And again, we're going to talk about this in a few seconds, than my ramp up time. Now, if I go down here, I can see my engines. I've got 500 users, but I'm showing 2 engines. I want to change that. I want to know if this one engine can handle all those users. And now when I run this course will run. We're going to have to jump over here to one that's already finished. And if I look at this engine health is showing me the CPU, disk, and memory and network on that testing engine, not on your server, on the testing engine server. That way I can see how it performs. Now the rule of thumb is if it's below 75 and 85%, then I can go add more users. If I'm above that, then I probably want to throttle some off, okay? And the good news is you don't really have to memorize all this. There's some, let me get back to the slide deck. When you get this recording, this link right here will take you and it will tell you all about that. But the ultimate goal is basically you want to figure out how many virtual users you can have out of a single load engine. That's your calibration test. The good, the bad, and the ugly is if I go change my scripts, I need to run the test again. And part of it is common sense if you think about it. My tests change, my script change could affect how my memory or CPU is going to perform. Okay, so that's in a nutshell calibration testing. So now let's get to the fun part. We've created a script. We validated the script. We calibrated the script. And now we're going to do a performance testing on that script. When you're doing performance testing, a lot of people are thinking, well, I know we can handle 50,000 users. So should I start to run at 50,000 users? The answer is no, you should not. As we did with the sandbox and the calibration, you need to build up to it. So if you're running 50,000 or 100,000 to start with, I would probably start with maybe 10%. That's just a rule of thumb, okay? Just get a test done at maybe 5,000 or so, ramp it up slowly. And in these initial tests you're running, you want to have your ramp up, which is this one right here that I kind of talked about, which is the time you go from 0 users to your peak users. You want that to be gradual. You want it to go slow. And the reason is you want to give your system enough time to get into trouble, basically, that you can see the symptoms and to know roughly where those symptoms appear. If you're in a rush to get to a large number of users, then you don't really know at what load level you're currently facing problems. Start your ramps up gradually and then build your tests up. You want to plan to do a series of tests and to have the ramp up slow enough so that you can figure out where do things start going wrong. Pop quiz question. I know none of you can answer this, so answer it mentally, but what is a good duration for a test? And if you're cheating and looking at the slide deck, I would say 45 minutes, and that's true. So rule of thumb, you want it to run for at least 45 minutes to an hour. That's a decent performance test. So let's go look at that. So if I go back here, let's go back to the script we were looking at before. We didn't do any tests on it, but it's going to kind of be our test bed. So here, if I have, say, 5,000 users, and I'm going to run it for, let's say, 1 hour, this is my ramp up. So I could say, you know what, I want them all to just, in a minute, I want all 5,000 users. And that's what this says, 0 to 5,000. But realistically, you want it kind of, like rule of thumb, I like to do it for 10 minutes behind my finish time, or maybe even 15. So if I'm doing 60, I might do 50 or 55. And what that's telling me is from this time, 50 minutes, I'll have 0 to all my users up there, which is 5,000. And then my system's going to run for another 10 minutes with a full load. And that's a pretty good performance test. So let me jump back over here. But again, the whole point of that conversation is you want to pay attention to your ramp up time and give your users enough time to get there. Don't shoot them straight up there, right? Give it enough time so if something breaks along the way, I'll know about where it was. Okay. So stress tests. You may in fact be ready for a sudden spike of users to arrive, but on the night of Black Friday, for example, you may have a page waiting to go live, and then suddenly when it does, you know you'll have a lot of people banging on your door. That's why you have the stress test here, which also could be known as a peak test. The system is likely to have some symptoms of strain when that happens, but you want to run that test, and then after the strain arrives, you want to scale back the load and see how the system recovers. Now, I've been doing this for many years, and I tell people all the time, you not want to, and I know it's probably another double negative I said there, but you don't want to run the test and say, hey, you know what, we hit our peak, we're great. The question is, well, how long can you run at that peak, right? So think of it as an athlete. Sure, they can make that 200-mile run, but at what pace can they keep going? So let's see what this looks like. So over here, we'll stick with we'll drop it down to 1,000 just because it's easier to see. Here, I can change my ramp up tests. So I can say, for the one that's easier to read, I can say load 200 users, run for a bit, load 400 users, run for a bit. And a good way to explain this too is, my wife calls me and tells me the car is making a noise at 65 miles per hour. Well, the truth is, you'd get in it, you drive it for, maybe a little bit, 10 miles an hour, no noise, 20 miles an hour, no noise, but I can keep ramping it up slowly until I get to the max. And then I say, oh, you know what? Your problem wasn't there. Your problem was over here at 600. So let's go fix it there. So hope that makes sense. That's a stress test or a peak test. But the big question is, how do I test smart instead of big? It's kind of that whole saying of work smarter, not harder. Okay, it's kind of the goal with this as well. To start with, you want to construct realistic user funnels. So in notation of testing realistic user flows, some of your users will drop out at different points of your page. So in other words, I'm very bad about going to Amazon, looking at a couple items, doing comparison, and leaving the site. I'll go there, add them to my wish list, drop out of the site. I'll go there, maybe even add them to my cart so I can see what the total would be before I go talk to my wife about buying it, then drop out of the site. And I may go all the way to putting it to where I'm almost shipped it just so I can see what the total is with shipping and the taxes. Then I may drop out of the site. So your users aren't going to be going to your site and doing the use case that you think every single time. You want all these flows to be incorporated into the script so it makes sense in the real world. Don't forget that we're simulating real users' behaviors. The more realistic your scripts are, the better your tests are. So I know you're saying, Tim, how can I do that? So start off with the construction of a realistic funnel. You need to know where they drop off. You need a model for that when you're testing, because if you only push, pretty common sense, if I only push 10,000 users through, sure, I'm going to get 10,000 happy users, right? But that's not realistic. You probably see something like 10,000 users start and a funnel that ends with about 10% near the end of the scenario. Okay. So the next one is, we want to set failure criteria. Luckily, Blazemeter makes it very easy to set criteria. Now, the user thing, you're going to have to do some thinking on this one. Here, Blazemeter can help you. When you run your tests, you're going to get KPI trends in Blazemeter, but it all comes down to pass or fail. All the stats and numbers might make sense to your testers or your developers, but at the end of the day, their bosses, the managers, so forth, they all want to know whether the test failed or not from business requirements perspectives, which we call SLAs, right? So in this case, SLAs can define latencies, number of errors, response times, And I'm going to show you how quick Blazemeter can help with that. So we jump back over here. It's still our little script we created. I can come down to failure criteria, and here I can label it. So I want to know when all my response times is greater than, 25. You can even say, I remember that page we talked about. So we created a new home page. I want to know if that home page has any errors, right? So there's error count is less than 0. Now, kind of tricky. Make sure you get these conditions right. Make sure they match what you're looking for. But notice how simple this is. And that's all Blazemeter handles all that for you. So let's go back over here. So the next one on the list is integrating with an APM. Now, Blazemeter presents the client side as we're all simulating the user's traffic, right? Because that's client. You get fancy reports for sure, but they only describe the client side. However, to find out what happened on the server side and what is the root cause of the bottleneck, you must have visibility into the server side. And an APM is a way to go. If you already have one, that's perfect. Blazemeter has a lot of integrations with most of the most used APM systems out there. And APM is something I've been doing for feels like forever. And I will tell you, same thing I tell every customer out there, is usually when your front end's having problems, it's usually not the front end, it's usually some cascading effect that leads to the back end. So this is perfect. I can see the issue my customers are having, but I can also figure out what the root cause is quickly by using all these tools together. Okay. Now, let's go into the next one. Now, earlier I mentioned that when you're doing a stress testing or spike testing, you really want to figure out how the system is going to recover. If you actually want to adjust that based on seeing problems happening on the fly, which is really cool, you can do that by using the request per second or RPS feature. And let me show you how to do that real quick. Again, it's fairly simple. We'll go up here. Let's say I have my 1,000 users, but I know my system has a problem at 500 users. So I can throttle that back to where I can get my request per second set to 500, and I can watch it go. The good news is I can do this on the fly. If I have this 20,000, whoops, I really fat fingered something. All right, let's start right over, maybe 5,000. There we go. I hit too many keys too fast. And while this is moving, I can say, hey, you know what? I'm having problems here, so let me start throttling back. That's really cool that you can do it while it's live in testing. All right, so let's go back to our slide deck, and I think there's one more bullet point on this one we want to cover, and of course your CDN. So finally, if you are using a content delivery network, you need to test it. People don't like testing their content delivery networks because typically the networks are afraid of load testing. They consider it as a DDoS attack. Also, you could get charged for it. Typically, you pay for the traffic. So you need to consider that when planning the budget that you will execute some amount of CDN testing. A good example, when testing your CDN, take Akamai for an example. They have a very strict set of requirements for the test configuration. Only when you obey to all of them and syncing with your Akamai account manager, testing against their website and retrieving enabled resources from Akamai can take place. Otherwise, you're probably going to get blocked or throttled, okay? Just keep that in mind. And there's a reason I have that last on the bullet because we're going to cover that in a few seconds as well, because now we're actually going to get to the show time. And here's where the fun stuff starts. Now, if you remember our script, we uploaded our script. We said it's good. We did a debug test on it. We figured out our users, but we're going to bounce this up. Okay, we're going to go to 50,000. We're going to break Tim's rule. Pretend like we've already done all that other testing. We know we're at 50,000 good users. I'm going to move my ramp up a little bit better. Bounce it up to 25 because I really want to see what's going on here. My duration is an hour. I'm still good with 50. Now, I'm going to go down here. Do you remember the whole CDN thing with Akamai? Well, one of the rules is you got to have 9 different test beds, okay? So what we can do, this is really cool. Blazemeter covers all your major platforms, Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, and of course, Microsoft Azure. Now, if I go through here, I can just pick some. So we'll go from Sydney. We'll get some from someone from Paris. That's fine. I'll jump down to get some from Microsoft, and we'll just do one by. Now here, the cool thing is if I know 15% of my users are coming from there. 10% of my users are coming from there. That leaves us to 50% of my users coming from there. We can adjust the traffic load based off the location. And if you noticed, my users were changing as I was doing that. Of course, I only did 4, because if I did 9, gotta be honest with you, doing the math to 100% is really a pain. But luckily, it does it for you, so you don't have to figure it out with a calculator, right? But just to make it quick and easy, I just kept it to 4. Now, we talked about the failure criteria, so I'm gonna go ahead and close that. This end user experience is a really strong piece of the tool. Now, if you had your Selenium scripts, now, to be honest with you, I didn't do mine because my bike shop really was thrown together and it throws errors, and I really don't want to debug those errors. But I do have an example I can show you here shortly. It's really nice because not only can you set this, but it picks it up as well. And I'll show you the end result. End result to me is the best part, because when you're seeing the report and you click on one of your high nodes, right? So if I have a spike, I can click on the spike. You actually get a picture of what the page did at that moment, okay? Which is really strong. Because if a user complains and says, hey, for some reason, my shopping cart just keeps locking up. So I can go and click and see where that is and see what's going on. It's really strong. Now, APM integration, we talked about that. Now I'm going to talk about the Blazemeter APM, because it's one I've been doing forever. Of course, I know the others just through proxy. But with saying that, I'll show you an example in a report of what that looks like and what you can get from it. But remember, we're talking about end user experience with Blazemeter, right? And, you know, the end user piece, APIs and all that good stuff. But I also want to know if a database had a problem, okay? And that's where this would come in at. So if you got new relics, app dynamics, you know, you can easily integrate with those. So the other cool thing is I can change JMeter properties right here. I can override my DNS if I want to. But another feature that I really like is this network. I can go in here and say, luckily, hopefully nobody's using DSL testing or, you know, some of these old ones. But if I come in here and say, this one's fine, I can change my bandwidth, I can do a percentage of package loss, but I can go up here and rename this one. We're going to call it Tim's Test, and we'll call it Web. That's fine. Not really professional, but you get it. Now, I'm going to go through and I'm going to duplicate this test. So basically, I just took a copy of that test. Let me get the pencil back. There it is. Now, what I want to do is rename this one to Tim's Test Mobile. Then what we can do is go down here, keep all of our settings the same. Now, if I want to change some of this, so we don't, you know, we don't have mobile devices in pairs. I don't know. I'm sure you would if you go the other way around. But still, now I can go down here and say, well, you know what? I assume all my users are at least using a good 3G connection. And there we go. Now, the cool thing is I can come in here, create a test. I didn't talk about this multi-test on purpose because we're going to talk about it now. And click on it. I can go in here, and now I can select these two tests, and I can run them together. Now, I can come down here. Let's say I want to change my mobile, and I want to drop some of my users on this one just because we expect less users. And there we go. And notice it also adjusted my location distributed as well. And then from there, we can run our test. Now, good and bad and ugly, the test will kick off, it will run, it will do its job. Unfortunately, you all will not see this because unless you want to hang out for another hour, you won't see the results. But the point is, I want to show you that, yeah, it works just fine. We got our total number of users, we got 160 engines, I got 2 scenarios, and we only had the 4 locations, and it's going to kick off. Now, while that's kicking off, I'm going to drop down here into another test that I did, not that one, this one. The green means it's running, so you kind of want to stay away from that one right now. This is one I did a while back. Well, maybe today, I don't know. I do these all the time, but saying that this is pretty similar, 8,000 users. We got 3.25% errors. I can scroll down. If I click on the errors, it's going to take me to this screen, but we'll get there in a few seconds because I want to jump to the timeline report. The timeline report is a very nice detailed looking report. It gives me everything I need to know. And if it doesn't, I can come through here and select it. And what I want to show you is if you have the user experience recorded and uploaded and all that good stuff, then you would actually be picking up your users as well, okay? Now, and the other one too, so let me go back up here. We'll get back to the user in a second. If I go down to here and I click on this one, with this one, I can scroll down and I can see the integration with APM. Now this is Blazemeter APM, but they all work the same. And the cool thing is I can actually come down here and see a SQL call. Now that's pretty awesome because I'm looking at user's experience. And of course, if I had the users recorded here too, I would see the people as well. Now, the beautiful thing about this, if I had an error spike right here, then I can look and say, oh, well, my stall count on this, on the SQL, which is beyond 45 minutes, which is the rule for an error for Broadcom's APM, had an issue. So now I know exactly to go within a couple of seconds of just looking at this page of where that problem is. And that's pretty strong because the truth is your call log probably said customer complained about shopping cart. Well, I can see where they had a problem was because, you know, the database was beyond an array or something like that, right? So that's pretty strong. So let's go back to our one that we were looking at just to keep it the same. Wrong space, apologize about that. And let's go back over here and we're looking at this one. So the next thing we're gonna look at is this request stats. The request stats is good when you talk about the KPIs, right? Because I can come through here, I can select what I wanna see. And it's really useful if you have to produce it like at a Scrum meeting or if you're your boss, because you can actually export it to Excel, okay? So they don't even have to log in. Let's go ahead and close that. Now the health engine we already talked about. This is the health engine of our test bed, not your system. But that's how you do your calibration. Now the errors to me is very important. Well, it should be for everybody, for that sake. But notice we get a lot of errors. And again, I know this is my shopping cart. I know there's errors. I don't really care. But this is very useful. I can see the response codes. I can filter by the response codes. There's a lot of good information to get in here. I mean, that's a lot of response codes there. If you do not find it or you want more information, we also provide the logs. The cool thing about the logs is I can even get the JMeter logs, right? I can download them, all that good stuff. And of course, I can get back to the original test configuration. It really comes in handy because if I'm moving in the flow and I got the errors and I got the logs, I'm like, you know what? Let me see that script. Maybe they just didn't do a good job on the script. Well, I just download it. Okay. Then I can open JMeter, look at it again, and upload it again and rerun my test. So that's a lot of really cool stuff there. The other thing we're going to look at is if I call the developers and say, hey, we found a problem, can you guys help us look at it? And you're like, well, we don't know where to go to look for that. Well, that's no problem. There you go. I just sent it to you. So you get to look at exactly what I was looking at, but in a live view. All right. So, and then let's go back over here. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to jump too far. The user experience is not here because this does not have any user experience for you to look at. And that's why I skipped over. So let's look at that and we'll go back to look at the other one. If I click here, and if I go up here and click on the spike, now it loads the images that happened within this spike. If I go down here and click on one, I can see this is my bike shop. Of course, it's without the style sheet or any of that stuff. That's why you don't see this, but it does show the user interaction. Now, the other good news is too, is you get all this other information out here. So if I come down here and say, hey, what is this? I can click on it and, sorry, I don't have a lot of real estate. Let's close this. I can click on this and get more information about it. Okay. Now, to me, that's really powerful, especially think about how much information you get from the front end. Again, we're getting that SQL call and how much information we're getting from the, oh, so the backwards, no. How much information we get from the back end, which would be that SQL call, and how much information we get from the front end, which is going to be all this information right here. That's really strong. All right, so let's go back over here. And I looked at share the report, but now I want to look at executive summary. This really is just a high level of everything that went on. This is pretty much what you get in an email. When I ran the report, it says you want to get an email from this when it's done. Like if I'm running a big one, you don't have to sit there and watch it. You'll actually get an email that says your report's done. And this is pretty much what you see. Okay? And it's a good report, something good to share with your boss as well. And then the other one is compare report. To me, that's really strong. So if I'm looking at this bike shop, I'm looking at this report, I'm gonna hit this. Now I could pick it from there, but I'm just showing you a different view. And I wanna go look at this one. Gotta be, some of these I don't have test in them just because I canceled out on them or something. So let's jump to the bottom. I know there's some in this one because it's pretty old. There we go. Compare. Now this is not comparing two valid reports, but you get it. So if I ran a test yesterday, and now I'm having a major spike issue today, I can actually run these reports together and see what's going on between these two reports. And they overlay each other, which is really cool. And you can add more than just two, right? I just did that just because it's easy. I can also change the resolution if I want to. And there's a lot of stuff you can do here. So with saying all that, that kind of wraps it up. You're not going to be able to see this one finished that's running, unfortunately, just because it's going to take a while to run, right? But with saying that, let's go back to our slide deck. The good and bad and the ugly is I covered a lot of stuff. There's a lot of details. Some of you all probably never even seen Blazemeter. Maybe the first time you all ever seen this work. In this case, we're here to help. So we do have professional services. We can help with the scripting services, the managed events. You all can see this. We're the leading industry in migrating companies from old school legacy tools to the open source testing tools. We also provide scripting services. So if you need help with your scripts, creating them, if you just want somebody to come in and say, hey, Tim, we've got a lot of use cases, help us put this into scripts. We have people that can help with that. And of course, we can help manage test events, of course. And luckily, you all will get this recording, so you can come through here and take a snapshot of what you need. And most importantly, just keep in mind, we're here if you have any questions. Whether it to be CI tool integration, running regular cadence meetings, as you saw a few seconds ago, or even just reviewing your scripts, right? Which is the few slides you saw back. So with saying that, I'm going to hand it over to Sasha, who sees or Emma, who sees the questions.
Yeah, so all right, so thanks, Tim, for that, for the presentation. Yeah, we have some questions coming in. I know that Sasha has also been answering them written as well, but we'll read some of them aloud. We've had a few questions around testing behind firewalls or on-prem solutions. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So at least 4 to 5 people have asked this question about testing behind firewalls or on sandbox. So Blazemeter does provide 2 options to test behind the firewall. So the thing that Tim just showed us is going by the assumption that the application being tested is public facing and externally available, so that any traffic coming in from the load engines in the cloud is passing through your firewall and able to hit the application. But what if you want to test an application which is completely behind your firewall, not accessible outside the network? So we have one easier option where you could still continue to leverage the load engines in the cloud, but you'll probably end up using creating a firewall rule on your side. So what we provide you with is an option of dedicated IPs, meaning so whenever we run this test in the cloud, we spin up a load engine on the fly for you. It starts generating traffic, right? So a random IP address gets assigned to this machine. But obviously it picks up an IP address from a pool of IPs, and obviously your firewall is going to flag that as a machine, as a request coming from outside your network, and is going to block it. So what we provide you with is a pool of dedicated IPs. This is available on our enterprise plans, and you can actually assign an IP address to a machine, which is basically available completely for you guys, and you can work with your network team internally to whitelist that IP address on your side, so that your firewall is passing through the traffic coming from that IP. So this is one option. This is probably an easier option that a lot of our customers go with, because they can still continue to use the load engines in the cloud in Azure, Google, and Amazon. The other option is where maybe you're testing a very business critical application. You don't want to allow traffic from outside into your network. That's very much possible. Your security team has a strict policy, and they really don't want any traffic coming from outside. In such a case, you can actually set up a load engine on-prem. We call it as OPL, on-prem load engine. Anybody who's familiar with the Blazemeter world must have heard this term a lot. So OPLs, the way this works is basically you spin up a Linux machine inside your network, but you install a Blazemeter agent on top of it, right? And the agent is kind of responsible for running your test. It generates the traffic and all of it. But after the test is complete, it reports the metrics back to blazemeter.com so that you can go and look at the report in the cloud still. So in this scenario, there's no traffic coming in from outside, but you will still need to open up the firewall to allow traffic internally from this OPL out to the cloud, which is blazemeter.com. I hope that kind of answers the questions around testing behind the firewall.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, I think I was still on mute. So we've had some questions as well around CI/CD and regarding CI/CD automation and performance testing, and if you can kind of elaborate on that as well. Some people are also asking like about integrations of application monitoring tools as well. And I know that Tim also mentioned a bit about APM. Can you expand a bit on that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the answer is yes to both. We do support both integrations. So CI/CD is definitely that's kind of the thing everybody is going with these days. We all have our own DevOps cycle. We're all shifting towards the left. We want to test ahead in the game, right? So as your developers start developing stuff, you want to be able to make sure you test it on a continuous basis. Identify any bugs, fix them, retest before going into production. Now, this doesn't apply only for functional testing. It's also applicable for performance testing. So we do support testing from pipelines or CI/CD systems. We actually have out-of-the-box plugins that we have developed for the most popular CI/CD tools out there, like Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, Azure DevOps, AWS Code Pipeline. So if you guys are using any of these systems, you can absolutely use our plugins from the respective marketplaces. You can download them. They can just kick off a Blazemeter test from the pipeline. And the good thing about these integrations is so they're also evolving on a daily basis as the product is getting matured. As we receive feedback from our customers, we're making updates to these integrations. These integrations can also go to the extent of actually failing your CI/CD build if it meets a particular failure criteria. Like for instance, say you're testing, against a website, and you set your failure criteria inside Blazemeter to something like, say, your average response time is greater than, say, 5 seconds on a page. You consider that as a failure. So the Jenkins, say if you're kicking it off from your Jenkins pipeline, Jenkins can detect that, oh, okay, there's a failure criteria that is met. So it knows that the test is a failure and not a pass. It's going to fail the task or the build, and it's going to alert you that, okay, something's wrong terribly with this. So we have the integrations developed to that detailed level. If you are using an APM tool, I know Tim mentioned earlier that Blazemeter is going to report on the client side metrics, because Blazemeter is, you think of it as JMeter in the cloud, right? So you have a client generating traffic to an application. So it can basically capture the response time, the hits per second, the error rate, and all of it. but it does not know what the CPU usage or memory usage is going to be on the server side, which is your own application, right? So this is where I think APM comes in handy. Like as you can see on the screen here, so we have an integration set up with DX APM, our own Broadcom APM solution here, wherein you can actually pull all the metrics or a subset of metrics for the application being tested, and you can overlay that data on the same graph. Like Tim, if you want to go select a few of those KPIs there. So as you can see, so this is going to give you a holistic view of both client-side metrics and server-side metrics all in one place. That way, it makes your troubleshooting easy. Like say, for example, you're running a large test, a 10,000 VU test. You're seeing a spike in your graph in the response times. You don't know why the spike is happening, and you want to figure out why. You don't have to really log into your servers and all. If you have your APM data right here, it's actually easy for you to overlay the data. I mean, if you're seeing a spike in memory or some garbage collection issues, then you can attribute that average response time increase to something related to either memory leaks or anything. It kind of makes troubleshooting easy. And I know, Tim, if you want to go back to the test config itself, we support integration with 6 popular products out in the market, like New Relic, DX APM, which is Broadcom's APM, CloudWatch, App Dynamics, Dynatrace. If you guys use any of these solutions, it's just 1-2 clicks away type of integration. You just have to key in the API key and all for those respective systems, and these are all documented. All you have to do is just go to guide.blazemeter.com. You have step-by-step instructions on how to set these integrations up. It's pretty straightforward. And just last but not the least about these integrations, if you guys are using a tool that is not listed there among the 6, like I know we have customers using Datadog, which is more of an infrastructure monitoring system. We have customers using the old school Perfmon, which is freeware. Maybe they don't want to spend on the license for an APM system. You can still report those metrics into Blazemeter because the entire Blazemeter platform is API friendly. You could actually go into api.blazemeter.com. Pretty much anything actually everything that Tim showed you now, like creating a test, running a test, starting a test, looking at a report, you could basically achieve all of it using an API call. Right? It's that easy. So if you use something like Perfmon, and you have all the metrics in a text file of your server-side metrics, we actually have an API to inject those metrics onto the graph, right? So you can build your own process. If you're using your own CI/CD tool, you want to kick off a test, just run a simple curl command and kick off a test. It's that easy. In fact, we have a lot of customers that are extending the functionality that we provide using our plugins, using these APIs. So I hope that answers the questions around integrations. I see another question here. Is there a way to download reports or archive due to 6-month retention? So there's limited functionality today as far as downloading goes. Yes, you can. Not the entire report, but you can actually download parts of it, like the request stats and all. You can download them as CSVs. All the graphs can be downloaded as PDFs, PNGs. The compare report feature that was shown earlier, you will have options to download those graphs as PDFs. So the answer is kind of yes and no for it.
Thanks, Sasha. I just want to also say that I put in the chat the links to the Blazemeter Labs, which has the plugins and integrations that Sasha was just mentioning, and also to the knowledge base, the guide. And as I can see, Tim also just put up some additional resources for getting started with Blazemeter. Also going to mention that there's the Blazemeter University as well, which you can head to. It's blazemeter.com/university. We'll send all these links as well in our follow-up email with the recording. But we have a lot of courses there about, getting started with performance testing as a, JMeter with Blazemeter, some of our new functions, scriptless testing, mock services, and more. So it's a really great resource. It's completely free. You get certified as well. So feel free to check that out. It's a great resource as well. I know we're wrapping up on time. I don't know if there's any sort of and I know we still haven't gotten to all the questions, but if I wanted to see if Tim or Sasha had anything that they'd like to wrap up before we close up for the end of the session.
No, I'm good. I was going to say thanks everybody for joining. As you see, this is the information. So definitely go there and play with it, especially if you've never been. So there's a lot, like Sasha was saying, there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of good help there as well. So definitely go play. And that's all I have.
So great. So I want to say thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Sasha and to Tim and to everyone. And we'll be sharing out the recording with all the links as well. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day or evening, and stay tuned to our upcoming webinars as well. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.